In this video, let's take a look at how to tie a knot in Fusion. You might have some spark plug wires or an intake manifold or some complicated path that you need to follow. And so let's look at how we can set up a complex path for whatever need that you have. So if I look at this, say, from the top view, um, and I have a sketch going around here. So I want my path to follow this curve uh, going around here. And then if I look at this, say, from the right side view and this sketch, I want this path to follow up here on this incline and then come down and follow along on a curve and then go into a straight line. So if we can define the path in two views, we can get the 3D path of how that follows the intersection of those two 2D paths. So let's look at how to set this up. So I'm going to start a new file and I'll go to the top view and start a new sketch on the XY plane, and I'm going to draw a line and I'll put it out here in space initially, and then I'm going to do a midpoint constraint between here and the origin, and let's change this line to construction line. So I'll select it and hit X on the keyboard to change that, and then I'm going to draw a circle from the center out to the end and trim away half of that circle. All right, I'll dimension the radius of that circle, let's say 25. Now you can change your dimensions and adjust them as you need later on. And then I'm going to draw another circle, or I might do it as a 3-point arc. Let's do it as a circle from here up to here, and I'm going to trim away part of this line. So let's trim away, or the circle. And I want to make sure that this circle is tangent to this circle. So I'll do constraints tangent between here and here. And then I'll actually, let's make sure that's tangent. Okay, and then I'm going to put a line in here. Notice I just dragged that up a little bit. Let's go ahead and put a radius value on here. So let's dimension it as 11.75. And then I'm going to draw a line. I want it tangent to this arc going down to this point. So I'm going to click and hold my mouse button down. Actually, I hit the midpoint of that line or that arc, which I didn't mean to. I want to avoid the midpoint right there. I'll hold the mouse button down. Now notice that as I go around this arc, it's going to put that tangent constraint on there if I hold the mouse button down, and then I'll let go of it on this point. Let's trim the rest of that arc off. So I have a line, a tangent arc, and another arc. Okay, now I'm going to finish that sketch, and I'll rotate around, and I'm going to do another sketch on the plane perpendicular to that. So I'll do it on this plane, and I'll do P for project geometry, and I'm going to project this point right here and this point right here, and then I'm going to draw a line going up from this point. I want to go up vertically. Now I accidentally drew a short little line here, and then I want to come down to here, so I'll draw a line from here down to this point. I'll go ahead and dimension that height, and let's do that as 12.5. And I want to change this line to construction, so I'll hit X on the keyboard and change that to construction. And then I want to come down from this and then orient it from the origin. I'm going to do a line, and maybe it'll be best if I look at this from the right side view from this point, and I'll come down here someplace, and then I'm going to click and hold the mouse button down to draw an arc about like that, and then I'll draw a vertical line. Now notice it put a tangent at this end, but it didn't put a tangent at this end. So I'll do constraint tangent between this arc and this line. And then I'm going to do coincident between the origin point, and I'm having trouble getting that. I got the origin and this line, so that lines up this line with the origin. I'll dimension the radius of this arc, let's say as 25, and then I'm going to dimension the distance from here to here, let's say is 30, and I want to make this line equal length to that one. So I'll do equal, this line is equal length to this one. Everything turns black. It's all fully defined. I'll then finish this sketch, and I'm going to rotate around, and I'll do an extrude. And I want to do this as a surface body. So I'll do extrude, and I'm going to select this profile. And I'm going to tell it, instead of starting at this sketch plane, I'm going to tell it to start up here at this point. And then for the distance, I'm going to tell it to go to object, and I want it to go down to this point. Okay, so it extrudes that from here down to here, and I'll say OK to that, and I'll make that sketch 2 visible again. And then I want to extrude this, and I just need to make sure that it goes all the way through the part. If I go to my sketch 1 and I look at the show dimensions, so this dimension right here was 25, so the diameter would be 50. And I see that that's D1, dimension D1. And so let's extrude the second sketch. And I'm going to select that sketch. I'm going to tell it to go symmetric and total distance, and let's say D1. And I see that it's not going where I expected it to over here, because that it's actually the radius, and so I need to go the that distance D1 on either side of it. Okay, now it comes over here to the edge of that cylinder. All right, I could have done that or multiplied D1 times 2 if I left it over here. I'll say OK to that. I'll turn off the visibility of these 2 sketches, and then I'm going to trim this surface next to give us a path. So I'll do trim surface. I'm going to use this surface as my trimming tool. And I want to trim away this portion up here. I want to trim away this portion here, and I want to trim away this portion down inside there. Now I need to get it actually because it's hidden behind the second extruded surface. Actually, there it is, so I can get it down here. All right, I'll say OK to that. Okay, now let's turn off this second surface, and we'll see what we have. So I have a path going up, it's going across, and it's going around this curve. So that's the compound angle of these 2 sketches where they would intersect each other, looking at it from the top view. So it's going around that surface, and looking at it from the right side view. So it's coming up and around the arc and down. I've got this upside down, but I think you get the idea. All right, so using those 2 profiles or 2D sketches, I'm able to get the complex 3D path for my knot or my pipe or my spark plug wire, whatever it is that you're creating. I'll go to the solids tools, and I'm going to do create a pipe, and I'm going to select, go around here, and I'm going to select this edge of this surface body as my path. And let's say I want to make that say 15, and I'll say OK to that. And that might be a little bit big. Let's see. I think we'll be all right. I'll turn off the surface body, and let's rotate back around so we can see this in 3D. And then I'll do a circular pattern of that body, and I'm going to select the y-axis and tell it I want to do 2 copies of that body. Okay, and I'll want to join those together, I'll say okay to that. And notice it didn't join those, but I'll edit that feature. I'll edit the circular pattern, and uh, I see that circular pattern for some reason doesn't give us a join option on that. So I'll have to do a combine, and I'll select this one and this one. I want to join those. I'll say okay to that. And again, it didn't give me, actually, I still have two bodies. So let's see what the problem is on that. If I edit this feature, notice I told it to keep the original body, the original as tool. So let's uncheck that and we'll say okay. And so now I have one body. I'll then do shell if I want this to be for some other reason. Now, if I wanted this to be a wire, I might split this face and change the color to copper with it. So I have the insulation and the copper on the center. But rather than split face, I'm going to do shell in this case. So I'm going to select that face and I'll select this face down here and I'll put in a shell thickness, whatever I want to make this hollow. And so that's, if you can determine in two views, a top and front or a top and right side, what the path would look like in an orthogonal projection, then you can use those orthogonal projections to create the 3D path to get the shape that you want, whatever that complex curve is.